What is up, guys? It's the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate, and today I'm back to talk about Warhammer 40K. The chills continue as this month is coming to its end, but we have more Halloween videos for you. Today I will be reading an excerpt from the novel The Last Hunt that has a human crew getting eaten by a Tyranid bioship. So Tyranids are one of the most creepy things in 40k in my opinion, besides chaos, but I mean, it's chaos. These guys have no remorse, there's no feeling, you can't try to reason with the Tyranids, they're just there to consume. And just like that, they will eat you apart, living, dead, whatever. So let's dive into this disgusting rendition of what can happen when humanity meets the unending devourer. The Vanguard Xeno bioships had passed by. JUF D-19 Rimward was now at the heart of their fleet, and compared to the organic drones that quested ahead of the main swarm, the true organisms of the hive were behemoths. Davric's mind struggled to comprehend what he was seeing as he took in sheets of pockmarked chitin the size of small continents and toothed orifices the size of cities. And the worst thing about the nightmarish Leviathan was that it was coming straight towards the Augur station. "Oh God, Emperor," Ankum stammered over and over. Corday was quietly sobbing, his head in his hands. Serene just stared, the image on the view screen reflected in her wide dark eyes. Only Crassus turned away from the display. He walked over to the worn leather of his command chair, paused, tugged his blue Sensor Master's uniform straight, and sat down. His expression was unreadable. Jaw locked, though in the harsh emergency lumens he looked more haggard than ever. "Crew members," he said, his words cutting through Arkham and Corday's despair. "In the past decades of service, it shames me to admit that I have not said this enough. Regardless, if there was ever a time, Throne knows it is now. It has been an honor to man this station with all of you." "And with you, Chief," Davric said. He was the only one to respond. His own words felt distant, disconnected, as though he was speaking to himself from somewhere far away. His mind was sluggish, unresponsive. His breathing felt labored. A strange detached part of his mind supposed that he was probably having a panic attack. Crassus had no more orders to give. He simply sat, watching the view screen. Davric reached out towards his picked capture of Amelia and Drewy, his wife and son, and tacked it to the side of his monitor. He would see them again someday. He was sure of it. A fresh surge of stuttered oaths from Akum distracted him before he could pull the pick off the side of the display. The Tyranid bioship had filled the view screens, and even as the stunned crew watched, the monstrosity's great hooked chitin beak split apart. The maw yawned wide, impossibly wide, wide enough, Davric was sure, to swallow one of Darkland's moons. Its shadow fell across the Augur station, blotting out the light of the stars. The structure around them seemed to shudder, as though its terror matched that of its crew. The view screen now showed nothing but static, washed darkness. It had swaddled them whole. Corday had slumped on the deck, shaking and weeping uncontrollably. Crassus was looking down into his lap, knuckles white where he gripped the arms of his chair. Ankum had finally stopped gibbering. "Serene," he managed to say, looking over at the Augur analyst. "Serene, there's something I need to tell you." She continued to stare at the now blank view screen. The sudden impact threw them all. Davric found himself sprawling across the deck, almost on top of Corday. The station shook violently, tremors dislodging rune banks and audio systems and sending Davric's empty recaf tin bouncing across the deck. The alarms triggered again. The view screen had gone offline completely, showing nothing but gray static. "Are they going to board us?" Ankum stammered as they picked themselves up. Any response was lost in another jarring impact. The station's frame shrieked in protest at the stresses put upon it. With their systems scrambled, they broke. It was impossible to tell exactly where they were or what indeed was happening outside. The station seemed to settle slightly, the sounds of tortured metal reduced to a low creak. They all scanned the ceiling, looking for any sign of a breach. "You hear that?" Serene said. It was the first time she'd spoken since seeing the bioship. They all listened, breath held, straining to hear over the groan of adamantium. Eventually Davrick caught what Serene had detected. A faint scratching, a scrabbling noise, as though someone, or something, was scraping across the outside of the hull. It mirrored the scratching torments of all of them from the inside of their own skulls. "They're on the hull," Davrick said. Before he could go on, a crash shattered the breathless quiet. The section directly above Crassus's chair, in the center of the station's cockpit, collapsed. With it came a flood of broiling green liquid that struck Crassus just as he looked up. If the old Sensorum Master managed to draw breath to scream, the bioacid flooded his mouth, throat, and lungs before he could make a sound. Davrick caught an impression of his death as he was lost entirely in the torrent, flesh slowing from bones, organics consumed in a heartbeat. The rest of the crew recoiled, but too slowly. Serene, nearest to the center of the cockpit, was struck by the acidic spray. Her hands went up to her exposed face. "No!" Ankum wailed, lunging across the bench to catch the auger analyst as she collapsed. He managed to drag her hands away from her face, then recoiled. Her features had already been reduced to pockmarked bone, her eyeballs running like liquid from their sockets, meat and tendons slipping away from her fingers. Still she screamed. Ankum doubled over and was sick. Davrick, whose station was furthest from Crassus's chair, scrambled back on top of the bench as the flood of acid spread across the decking plates. Serene had collapsed into the rising swill, her body coming apart. Ankum tried to push himself against the Vox banks, but he was sick again and collapsed. The bugs got to him before the acid. There were insects in the hissing, steaming slime, writhing, slightless maggot things with hard black shells. They swarmed from the discolored vomit-like biomatter. The air was full of saturation of their passing as they swiftly covered the deck and then the cogitator stations, workbenches, and walls, riding the rising tide of acid. First hundreds, then thousands of them reached Ankum, swarming over his body. They were all over his boots, his knees, then up his arms where he was crouched against the Vox systems. He tried to scream, but choked on his own bile. His eyes rolled back into their sockets as the alien swarm began eating him alive. Corday killed himself. Face still streaked with tears, he leapt directly from his bench onto the stream that had consumed Crassus and his command chair. He was gone in an instant, as the breach in the station hull was burned wider and wider. As Ankum's eaten-up remains collapsed into the bioorganics sloshing about the cockpit's deck, Davrick stood rooted to the top of his bench. He couldn't think, he couldn't move. He was in the throes of panic. A part of him realized he should end it quickly like Corday, but another part was desperate for another way out. Any way that avoided the nightmare bile that was burning away everything. It was digesting them whole. Even as the terror kept him in place, Grohl's binary chair collapsed, pitching the unresponsive tech adept into the effluvium. His red cloak billowed for a moment before he was lost, coming apart amidst the steaming clouds of liquefied organics. For a moment, Davrick was alone. For a single ludicrous second, everything felt surreal, ridiculous, almost calm. It had to be a nightmare. None of this horror could possibly be real. Then his bench collapsed. "Oh God, Emperor, no!" he screamed, trying to scramble back onto the plastile's disintegrating remains. "No, no, no!" The bioacid caught him, sloshing around his boots, where his lower fatigues. His panicked wails quickly turned into screams of agony as the material was eaten away, exposing flesh that in turn began to slough off. Muscle and sinew became gray, organic paste that revealed bone that gave way beneath its own acid gnaw weight. Davrick died slowly, on his knees, eaten up inch by inch in the bile and the sightless, burrowing things that swarm in it. Eventually the insects flooded his raw throat, choking and suffocating him as they ate out his eyes, bored through his nose and ears and into his brain. The acid took what remained as another section of the hull caved to emit a fleshly gout of vicious toxins. The picture of Amelia and Drew fell from the side of Davrick's primary view screen onto the flood. In an instant, the smiling wife and son were gone, consumed entirely. And with that being said, we have come to yet the end of another Halloween horror-themed video. So this was pretty gruesome to imagine all these people pretty much being digested alive. The deaths are very vivid. Like, I can already picture them melting, getting eaten by these maggots in the acidic slime. The Tyranids are a messed up race when you think about it. Yeah, you see them going up against space marines and whatnot, but when it's just humanity against the Devourer, like, they have no chance. At the beginning of this excerpt, you just see how massive this bioship is. Its mouth opening up wide enough to blot out the sun and the stars. This thing is like continent size. The mouth is city size. Like, it is crazy to even fathom something of this scale. Let me know your thoughts down below because this is a very fun, very interesting read. And again, if you guys want more Halloween horror themed videos, check out the previous weeks because we've been posting all month long. And we've also got playlists from previous years so you can get more of that horror aspect into your lives. But for now, let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more things 40K, and I'll be seeing you tomorrow. This has been the Sound Alchemist, part of One Mind Syndicate. I'll catch you then. Peace.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.